welcome to the Online Ocean Symposium. In this discussion, aptly titled Capturing Our World, I have caught some pretty awesome guests who will be chatting about why we take photos of nature, why those photos move us, and their impact on the conversation of conservation. We're going to see some awesome photos and some amazing ocean footage. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to ask either on the event page or on the comment sections in the Hangout below. First, let me introduce our awesome guests. We're just going to run through, give a quick wave, and then we're going to go into our actual discussion. First and foremost, we have Dan Fox. Dan, can you give a nice wave to everybody? Awesome. From One Simple Question, the movie, we have Ben and Teresa. Can you give a big wave? Hello. Hey, guys.
Hi.
From 70 Degrees West, we have Justin and Michelle.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey. And last but not least, we have the amazing Kip Evans. Hey, Kip, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Not too shabby. Since we have you here, I'm going to just start with you. You know, we're talking about photography, we're talking about ocean conservation, we're talking about all these different influences. First and foremost, you're known as an ocean photographer and a conservation photographer. How did you get into it? Like, how did you get into actually the process of, you know, photographing nature? What got you into it initially?
Are we going with Daniel or me right now? I'm sorry.
You. Sorry, Ken.
Oh, okay. All right. Sorry. Because I saw Daniel pop up on the screen. So I actually got my start as a photographer right out of college. I was really interested in marine conservation, marine science, which I studied at UC Santa Barbara, and I spent a lot of time just kind of cruising around the tide pools off the coast there. I brought my underwater camera with me a lot of times, and really got into photographing marine invertebrates. And that passion kind of grew over time, and I started teaching, actually, marine science, and realized that really what I wanted to do was become a full-time photographer. And so what I started doing is bringing my camera along on field trips and documenting everything I could. And then those images ended up being used in presentations, any type of educational lecture I was doing for high school or college students. And then eventually I ended up working for the National Marine Sanctuary Program back in 1995. And at that point I was a pretty accomplished amateur photographer, and I was also really getting into doing video work. And I did 3 years, almost 4 years with the Sanctuary Program, and I met a woman named Sylvia Earle in 1998, and she actually provided me with my first opportunity to become a full-time professional. So she hired me on to work on a full-time project called the National Geographic Sustainable Seas Expeditions. Mm-hmm. And I did that for 5 years, flying submersibles and documenting our expeditions as we traveled around the world, mostly on the Western Hemisphere side, but yeah, all different types of places. And
yeah,
then,
sorry to interrupt, but you actually mentioned Sylvia Earle, and we do have a couple of old photos of her, you know, with NOAA and some expeditions. You know, that's a fairly old black and white one of her in the original submersible and living underwater. And we also have you, a photo from Mission Aquarius right there with her big smile.
Yeah. So that's actually a photo I just took this past summer of Sylvia and the Aquarius habitat, which is located off the coast of Key Largo, Florida. And as you can imagine, over the past 15 years, I've taken a lot of photos of Sylvia. Mm-hmm. But I like this one because it shows her underwater, but she's totally dry. You know, it's a very different look for Sylvia. Usually you get her anywhere near the water and she's soaking wet, or dripping wet, I should say. So it's just a unique perspective of a woman who's done so much for the oceans.
That's awesome. I wanted to give you a chance just to talk a little bit about one or two of the photos that are from your collection. So yeah. Tell me a little bit about this guy, the alligator.
Yeah, he's
crocodile.
Yeah,
wow.
So he's an American crocodile, and it's one of my favorite photos because it's the only time I've been in the water with a crocodile. And the image has importance for me for two reasons. One is what I just mentioned, but secondly, it was taken in the waters of Jardines de la Reina, which is in Cuba. And so being able to go to Cuba and dive is a huge deal. It's very hard to get in there and have that opportunity. So once you're there, you immediately realize that you're in a very special place. It's a marine protected area. It's about 5,000 square miles in size, the largest MPA in the Caribbean.
MPA, can you define that acronym?
Yeah, marine protected area.
Thank you.
And so this area sees, I was told, about 500 divers a year. It's not a huge amount of traffic that goes through there. So it's very remote. It's hard to get into. But once you're there, you feel like you're in this pristine environment. And the reefs are healthier there. There's more fish. There's just an amazing abundance of sharks. One of the shots, I don't know if you're going to show it, is a shark shot. I can tell you a little bit about. There it is. But getting back to the crocodile, just briefly, it was just incredible to kind of slip over the side of the boat and swim around in a mangrove with a crocodile. And this one was kind of friendly, as you might imagine. He's kind of befriended the divers. Yeah, so I spent about an hour in the water with him, and they're really impressive, just incredibly fast animals. The silky shark that you're seeing now was taken there in Jardines de la Reina as well, and I'm about a foot from the shark, and he came and bumped the port on my camera after I got done taking the shot. That's how close he was. But just you can see the ampullae of Lorenzini, all the holes in the front of the shark there, and it's just I don't know, it's kind of a tantalizing view of the abundance of sharks in that area.
Well, that's awesome. That's a really fantastic photo. It's just really, really well done. You feel like you're right there with it, and you kind of want to reach out and touch it. With that, I'd actually love to move along to 70 Degrees West. Hey guys, how's it going?
Very well, thank you.
How are you doing?
For those of us who don't know, can you tell us a little bit about what 70 Degrees West is, what is involved with it, that sort of thing?
Yeah. 70 Degrees West is a photo documentary project where we're traveling from essentially the North Pole, Greenland, following a single line of longitude south to Antarctica. And we're concentrating on about 8 unique ecoregions along this single line of longitude and the effects that the modern world has on these unique environments.
So I'm pulling up right now a infographic that you guys just put on your Facebook page that tells about all these different phases and different portions of the actual trip that you're putting on. What phase are you guys working on currently?
Right now we're on phase 3, which will be in the Sargasso Sea, and we're going to specifically investigate the invertebrates and fish and humpback whales that migrate through the Sargasso Sea, as well as what's located in there, which is the North Atlantic trash gyre. So there's a huge garbage patch out there. So we're documenting not only this unique sea, it's the only sea in the world actually not bordered by land, and how the plastic pollution issue, which does affect, of course, the entire globe and all the oceans, specifically plays a role in affecting the Sargasso Sea.
Most definitely. You guys actually just released a little bit of a video footage of your last phase of the project. I'm going to show that right about here, but can you talk a little bit about that, Greenland?
Yeah, Greenland was incredible. The only word to describe it really is just absolutely mind-blowing. Ethereal, vast expanses of ice and icebergs. We spent 3 months up there on the sea ice, traveling around by sled dogs, the only way to travel around, and documenting the Inuit way of life and their hunting traditions, and documenting the beautiful ice scapes up there.
So can you tell me a little bit about their hunting traditions? Like some of the photos that you sent to me to show were, from some perspectives, a bit graphic and might not really be considered, the most conservation aspect. But can you tell us how, what you've been searching for, what you've been studying in Greenland with the native tribes, how it plays in with your 70 Degrees West mission and theme?
Absolutely. It was a moral struggle for the two of us as well, because, you know, the fact is that it's a very small amount of people where we were in Connaught, Greenland, and this has been their traditions, their way of life, their culture, their heritage for hundreds of years, and hundreds of thousands of years. So you're talking about traditions that before the modern world came and before we even had the ability to go up to the North Pole, that was the only way they were existing and thriving. However, it is difficult to look at the photos, and it is hunting, and it's a double-sided coin, but it's difficult to condemn them because they do in these certain places live a very subsistence-based lifestyle. So when you do that, you are taking away their livelihood and their ability to survive in the polar regions.
Yeah, I wanted to specifically show those images because, well, for that reason, because you look at the image and you don't think, well, you think right off that it's this is something bad. This is a seal being killed, but and it is. I mean, the populations are being impacted by Inuit hunting, but at the same time, there's more to the story because the Inuit, like Michelle was saying, the Inuit have been surviving in this way forever, and we can't really go and condemn their lifestyle. So it's a complicated situation up there.
Well, it most definitely sounds like it. It also sounds like our impact on the native populations of seals are, by ours I mean more the Western worlds, directly affect their community. And some of your photos here have this impact that makes you stop and think. You stutter step in the whole, oh God, there's this hunting scene. But then when you realize that this is the native practice, this is what has been, as you mentioned, going on for generation after generation, and their impact is very minimal compared to the larger impact. There's definitely a conversation that comes from those photographs and those images.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you also have some other photographs from other phases. This one, I believe, is from Maine.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us a little bit about Maine, and also can you tell us a little bit about how someone at home can participate in your project?
Yeah. First off, that image, it's an aerial image of a section of the Penobscot River in Maine. It was the river, the watershed that we were concentrating on, dam removal on the Penobscot River. And this section of river was just gorgeous. It was a healthy section, a free-flowing river, and I think that the aerial imagery really works well to tell sort of the full story. It gives you a lot of information really quick. I mean, you can tell that this is it's vibrant, green. It's a healthy river,
Yeah. There's also tons more photos on your social media pages, especially your Facebook, and there's some behind the scenes. I believe there's actually a shot of you, Justin, in a helicopter taking some aerial photos. Just to wrap up with you guys on this section, is there any big announcements that are coming up about the next phase of your project, anything like that?
Yeah, actually, we do have something pretty exciting to announce, that we'll soon be launching our Kickstarter for the next phase of Sargasso Sea and plastic pollution. So we're really excited about this because it gives everybody an opportunity to share in our passion that we have for the oceans, and it's also received some fun and creative awards. So yeah, I mean, plastic pollution in the oceans is obviously a huge problem, and it's growing, and it affects all of us. So we're really excited for this next phase and through our Kickstarter to kind of have the opportunity to get this message out.
That's great. Where can people find out more about your Kickstarter?
Yeah, so we have daily updates on our Facebook and weekly blogs and Twitter feed and our Vimeo stream. So yeah, definitely check out our Facebook as well as our blog and
all our social media avenues.
All right, sounds great. I'm going to throw it over to one simple question: the movie. Can you tell us about your project?
Sure.
Go ahead.
It's a documentary film that we shot in 2011 about going to find an iceberg aboard a small sailboat. And it was just a simple idea of getting out there, enjoying nature, being a part of it, and trying to find something that we just had a whim to go find.
Uh-huh.
And sort of inspiring people just to do that. It doesn't have to be a grand adventure, just a simple get out there and go do something is the idea behind it, really.
So you guys, sorry to interrupt, you guys also described the life of kind of giving up land, giving up all the comforts of land and living on a boat. Can you talk a little bit about that too?
Well, sure. I mean, the whole journey took place aboard a 28-foot sailboat, and with pretty limited amount of things and limited amount of space, and we were packed in there quite tightly. It was the two of us, a camera crew, and my cat aboard, and much of the time we were offshore, away from land. Some of the time we could see land, but certainly out there in it. So.
Most definitely. I think I have a little bit of footage of you with your cat in the official trailer. But there you guys are, working on the boat, working the rigging. And again, sorry about the lack of sound, but this is relatively new technology, and there are issues. So, not to spoil the movie itself, but did you guys end up finding the iceberg?
Andrew, we found something better than the iceberg. We were quite surprised by what we ended up finding. We found a piece of the Petermann Ice Island, which is the largest ice island to break off of Greenland in the last 60 years.
Wow.
And it was pretty significant, and the climatologists and glaciologists were really interested in this event, and we didn't really expect to find this. We didn't go searching for it, and it really... We read about it in the local newspaper, and it kind of surprised us. And from that, we started asking more questions about it and learned a lot about ice and, you know, the significance of the Petermann.
Oh, wow. That is really fantastic. So what is the significance of the Petermann?
Oh, it's you know, it's the hot debate of global warming, what causes what and whose fault really is it. But it is a sign of global warming, these huge chunks breaking off of Greenland. And we talked to glaciologists about the retreat in Greenland of the glaciers, the breaking of icebergs off from the glaciers. There's also a new issue with the air pollution has been darkening the ice up in Greenland, so it absorbs more heat. So there's three factors right now that are just, you know, multiplying the fact of global warming and sea level rise.
And they also talked about how when a piece of that size, that significant, breaks off of a glacier, that ice, it was like a floating tongue. It was where the land met the ocean, and the ice extended out onto the water like a floating tongue, and that's the piece that broke off. And it kind of acted like a plug to slow down the glaciers from, you know, going out flowing, right?
It's like honey on a piece of bread. And the honey just kind of flows out towards the edge of Greenland.
So when that piece broke off, it accelerated the rate of the glaciers.
Wow. Bill McGibbon was actually on Real Time with Bill Maher and talked a little bit about you know, the difference between white ice, darker ice, and, you know, blue ocean in regards to energy collection and absorption, and how it's actually warming our oceans at a faster rate since there isn't the ability to reflect that light and that energy away from these very, very, I guess the best way to describe it is fragile ecosystems. Now, it's amazing that you guys put together this film, that what you were originally looking for was not necessarily what you found, but how can people at home actually get more information or get more involved with your project? And what is next with your project?
We're still in post-production right now with our project. There's a lot of editing to do, a lot of sound engineering, music to be written, and all of that.
Graphics.
A lot of graphics, and we're hard at work on that. We're a really small team of volunteers, because, you know, it's an independent film right now, and there is a way to get involved. We just posted, oh, you've got it up there now. We just posted on our website our All Hands on Deck page, which talks about what our plans for the future with this film are and how people can help make this film a success and join the team.
Yeah, it's a grassroots operation of spreading the word for this film, really.
Well, that's fantastic. I hope all of our viewers at home and all of our participants have a chance to spread the word and let people know about what's going on. We'll get back to you in just a moment, but now I want to throw it over to Dan Fox. Hey, Dan, how's it going?
Pretty good. Just pretty good yourself.
I'm doing pretty good. Can you tell me a little bit about who you are, what you do, and what the Wild Image Project is?
So the Wild Image Project is my ongoing narrative of my relationship with nature. So I do small expeditions. I do a lot of kayaking, and I take photography. I do photography. I do short videos, and I write little stories. And the stories are more kind of philosophical. They want to bring a different perspective. Our relationship with nature through the last decade has become, there's an extreme awareness, but at the same time there's an extreme disconnection. Nature has become this beautified thing that we put on a wall, we watch on TV. Well, in reality, nature, it's a source of teaching. When you spend a lot of time in nature, you realize many things. But nowadays, by not spending time in nature, we don't get that teaching. So through my stories, I try to bring that back to the table. One of the things that you realize by spending a lot of time in the elements is that there are things that are bigger than you. It's not always about yourself. And all the species, you included, are caught in that struggle of survival. And I was really interested by what 70 Degrees is doing with the indigenous communities, because the indigenous communities have never seen themselves above or separated from their environment. They see themselves as part of it. So their impact is not seen as a negative aspect, but just this is life. Life is not this static environment that we try to keep together, but it's this constant dynamic that goes on. So I try to write about that and bring this perspective back on the table.
Well, you know, I have to say, just from looking at some of your stuff on my own, and especially some of your video that you've been working on, it's just amazing how serene some of these images are, how really right into the frame you feel like you are just as a participant. There's this one video that I was showing just while you were speaking, where at one point you show yourself just kind of falling back into the ocean, and it's just this amazing, amazing feeling that you get just from watching that.
Yeah, well, the reality of that shot in particular is I was absolutely I had just been swimming in the middle of the Atlantic, and it was my first swim, and I was so nervous. And my mask was leaking. It was not really the best moment at all, and I just came back from my first encounter with the sperm whale.
Oh wow!
So and nothing was working properly. So that shot that you see in particular, I'm really like telling myself, relax, 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 because in reality, my heart was going like this.
And was this the sperm whale that you were looking at?
Yes.
That's not
I could not even because my mask was leaking. I could not even see where I was looking and what I was doing. But so some of the things that people have said to me about my short videos and my stories is because I try to tell. Because nowadays I think we have the capacity to tell stories that I call that 360 degrees, in which you have the photos, you have the videos, and you have the story to support your narrative. Is that trying to set a mood. So most of the videos that I do have no, I don't talk, it's just, there's a music, it tries to create an environment, and then the story supports that. And a lot of people have said that when I watch or when I read your stuff, it reminds me of the time when I experienced it. And that's precisely what I want to do. I just want to keep that seed alive, because we all the people who work within the conservation or within the out there in nature, they have a moment, they have an epiphany, they have a time where they felt something bigger, and this is the only way that you can get that is by spending time in nature. Now it's getting harder and harder for the generations or for the children to get that connection, because we spend most of our time now in cities or in city parks. So by trying to keep that seed alive, by trying to have them go and experiment the wilderness, maybe each, the people will get that epiphany, that moment that will change their life.
So this actually brings me to one quick question for the panel in general. This was something that was brought up at the Blue Ocean Film Festival, which happened now, it feels like forever ago, but it's still, those conversations are still alive. One of the things that came up was in regards to the type of photos that we show in regards to ocean conservation. Do we show the pristine, pretty images of the dolphin pods in the blue ocean water, or do we show the pelican with a stomach full of horrible, horrible plastics? What is best to show? Let's throw it to Kip. What do you think? In regards to the conservation conversation, which is the better image?
You have to show both, absolutely. You want to inspire people, make them realize there's still hope out there, but at the same time, we need to educate the world that there are still issues. There are animals that are still getting entangled, eating plastics. So it's our job as photographers to bring those issues to light, to help inspire people to make good choices when they're shopping, or make good choices when they want to donate their hard-earned money.
All right. What do you think, Ben and Teresa?
I agree, but I think it also depends on your audience. I feel like for your younger people, or people who don't know what's going on, you got to show them the beauty, but for a certain audience, they know that there's beauty out there, and it's really important for them to see the devastation that's going on. So I think it's important to play your audience right.
Most definitely. Justin, Michelle, what about you guys?
Yeah, I agree with Kip and Ben. I think it's a delicate balance. You don't want to bombard people with too much negative imagery, because a lot of times they can just turn away and choose to not look. So it's that balance between showing enough really beautiful imagery to inspire people to get out into nature, and then also to keep people, like Kip was saying, keep people educated and aware of what the problems are.
Dan, I'm sure you have something to say about this.
Yeah, I think it's really important to show everything. Nature is just not this one side of the coin. It's multifaceted, and it's killing is part of it. Like 70 West was talking about, the seal being killed. It's important. I'm thinking of, like, my next photography project is going to be to show the gruesome aspect of nature, to remind people that it's not just this pretty dolphin, communicating. Dolphins can be pretty nasty within each other. Horses, I've seen horses, being nasty to each other, and it's we have to remember that dynamic within nature. That's not just this pretty thing, but obviously our impact, but also within nature, we need to see to show the full reality, not just the sanitized one.
All right. Well, that's definitely a good perspective. One contrary opinion, just to play the devil's advocate, is in regards to shareability and what people like to pass along. And one of the most talked about, one of the most reposted images or even videos that went out relatively recently was this one from Octavio Alberto. I'm showing a story that was posted by Amir McGrew on the Huffington Post. It's called David and Goliath. It shows a photographer right in the center looking at this giant school of fish, and it was this amazing photo that just kind of got passed all throughout Facebook, all throughout Google+, all throughout Twitter, and it was such a big story that the Huffington Post actually put a big story up about it. When it comes to images that show awe-inspiring concepts or awe-inspiring images of ocean, of things that we can't even fathom because it seems so far removed, doesn't that kind of play on the other side of the coin? Let's throw it to Kip.
Well, I'd just like to comment first on the photo because I'm a friend of Octavio's, and I know where the image was taken. I was just there with him in September. It's Cabo Polmo, and I think that the story behind the image is even more inspiring than the image itself. I don't want to take anything away from the image, but it's such a great example of how successful a well-run marine protected area can be, and that's what Cabo Polmo is all about, and that's why you see such a great abundance of fishes there. And so first you got to have the animals, you got to have the fish, you got to have the ingredients to make a good photograph, and Octavio knows that place like the back of his hand, and he works on creating images like that. So does it inspire people? Absolutely, because you just don't see big, huge schools of fish like that in the ocean anymore unless you're in marine protected areas. So I think we need more of those types of images. Anything that can grab an audience, grab the public's curiosity is a home run for all of us.
All right. Ben, Teresa, what are your thoughts on that?
Skippy? A text message from someone. I don't know who it is, but it seems related to this conversation. Kind of sidetracked.
All right. Well, Justin, do you guys have an opinion on these awesome, impactful images?
Yeah, I mean, I know Octavio as well, and I remember seeing that image pop up on National Geographic and just being totally awestruck by it. And I agree with Kip. I think it's images like that that really draw people in that we need more of. It's, you know, the kind of images that are so impactful that they go viral on the internet and really affect a lot of people. I mean, obviously, we're all out trying to create those type of images, and they're not easy to create. We just get lucky every now and then. But yeah, he did an amazing job with that one.
And I think something else to note, I really agree with what Dan is saying. When you talk about having the human element inside a photo, like you were asking Andrew, it does kind of, it makes you double take, like, okay, this isn't some natural progress that's happening underwater. This is like, you know, human interacting with the natural world, which is important to comment on because of our population, because we are such a strong impact on the world. We do need to focus on how we are relating with nature, and then at the same time, I think it is equally important to have you know, the whales fighting. And that recent photo that came out, I think it was on Mission Blue, the white shark is being attacked, but
what, by the seal?
Yeah, by the seal. So I think they're both can be really incredibly influential, and it's all really important.
Yeah. Well, one image that we actually talked about pre-Hangout was this bad boy by Brian Scarry.
Yeah.
Just to talk about human impact, and I mean, the shot itself is, you know, the imagery, the light, it's just very impactful. But anyone want to take a few sentences and take a crack at this guy?
Yeah, I think, Andrew, one of the most important things in our society now is the story behind the image, because we live in an era where, you know, you just do a Google search or Flickr or Vimeo or YouTube. There are millions or hundreds of thousands of photographs online, and now I think people have become, yes, you know, it's a beautiful picture, but then you move on to something else because we just consume images the same way that we consume everything else. So the impact of images does not have the same, it's not as important as, let's say, you know, back in the Vietnam War, where we, you know, these images were new and people were suddenly exposed to a new reality. Nowadays, it's just like, you know, what's the flavor of the day? Okay, so that's the new picture, fine, you know, let's move on to something else. And you have these media outlets who will feed on that, but without often telling the real story behind them. You know, that story that just Kip said, like, this is, the story was a reality because of that marine protected area. So that is the emphasis that should be talked about, not just, hey, this is a beautiful picture. So we need to support these images with much more substance than just this pretty thing. Because, you know, now you have National Geographic, Discovery Channel, BBC, you have thousands of photographers online that have their portfolio, and there's so much talent out there And so you have a lot of content, but for for the viewer who just basically has so much to view, what's the ultimate impact? So the story, for me, has to be extremely important.
So you're saying that no matter how aesthetically pleasing or disturbing a photo is, you have to have that story behind it to actually give it more pulp and meaning and impact.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. You know, honestly, when it comes down to any type of imagery that's linked with story, the first thought goes to more moving images, more documentarian style filmmaking. And so I'd like to, again, throw it back to Ben and Teresa. Where do you see this imagery, photography, and story aspect? Where do we go from here with that?
Andrew, as I was looking at all these pictures and hearing what everyone had to say, I couldn't help but think that everything that we've seen and talked about so far, none of them are really images that you can see when you're just beachcombing, the kinds of things that people connect with on a daily basis when they're walking along our coasts, like pictures of harbor seals or the hermit crabs or things like that. And even Ben and I, we sailed as far north as we could to see an iceberg, which for most people, they won't see an iceberg ever, and that's okay. And I think that a way to connect that we should all be thinking about with people is to take images, beautiful images of the beauty that's right in our own backyard and coastlines, because those are things I think that will drive people to get out and look at these organisms that are so close to them. I mean, for people that live on coasts, and maybe more driven to get involved and help protect them or be respectful of them.
Anybody else want to take on that concept, that issue? No? Well, then I'd love to actually slightly disagree on that. One of the images that I saw when I was looking for stuff that actually was impactful or interesting was this bad boy that was put up by Mission Blue. This right here is known as, I'm probably going to destroy the pronunciation on it, Valila. It's a organism that's actually a colony of organisms that work together. I've never seen one of these things before in my life. I've seen various jellies and various other like man-of-war type creatures, but these things have such an iridescence and such a beauty and such a story behind them that I just was compelled to learn more and more about them. And honestly, what's amazing about this type of photo is that it led me and a bunch of my friends who I showed it to do searches on it to learn more about it and to actually find out that we aren't actually 100% sure how they recreate themselves or procreate themselves. We don't know their full life cycle, and it's just shows, again, the scratching the surface of how much mystery there is about the ocean. And while we do see things in our backyard, and it does compel us to interact more, I think that there is something to be said about having this thing that's completely, not necessarily alien since it is of our world, but alien to ourselves so that we feel compelled to explore more.
I think, Andrew, just one thing. One of the problems that we have in our culture or society right now is that there's a disconnection between what we see on TV and the message, the end message. We can show beautiful pictures, we can talk about nature as long as we want, but it's ultimately at the end, within the parenting and the children, nature is still seen as a dangerous place where you're going to get scratched, you're going to get diseases and all that kind of stuff. And for us, the westernized world, nature is a concept, it's not a reality. It's something that you're disconnected from, but that you can think about, compared to the indigenous communities where nature is a reality. They have to deal with it. They have to survive from it. So it's total two different relationships. And the most important thing in our system right now is to be able to connect the beautiful stuff, to have them being inspired, but then to have the same message when it comes to going out. To have their parents say, you know what, go and explore, I mean, I was brought up by, it's 8 o'clock in the morning on the weekend, get out of the house, I don't want to see you until like dinner time. So you would just go out and you would explore and you would scratch your knees, you would climb up trees, you would get stuck in a tree and then
but this was really important. Now the message that we get from the end message that we get from nature is that it's a really dangerous place. So independently of how inspired they are on one end, at the other end is this extremely worrying place where, you know, we have to use Pyrrell every day to wash our hands, to sanitize because it's full of diseases and things like that. But that's
started on Pyrrell.
So we need to change that dynamic.
I'd like to make a comment, and that is, you know, I get this kind of question quite a bit. You know, do you feel the need to explore different places around the world? Do you find things in your own backyard? And I think the answer is both. You know, there's great things to be discovered in your own backyard, and I'm lucky enough where I have an ocean in my backyard, the Pacific Ocean, and the Ella that you put up. The common name of that is By the Wind Sailor, and we have those come up on the beach here. So I've been fascinated with those since I was a teenager, but at the same time, you know, all of us that grew up in nature and were told by our parents to split for 10 hours and don't show up until you're starving, you know, at 9 o'clock tonight. This is second nature to us. But you know, as a parent with an 8 and a 10-year-old, society's changed, you know, and I think the media and the news organizations have changed our perceptions of safety, and you know, what good parent and good conscience could let their kid disappear for 10 hours nowadays, you know, without checking in, or it's just unfortunately a different world, and I don't want to use hand wipes either, but we know now how germs are spread. You know, we know that soap can kill some of these things and keep you healthier, but then again, you're putting chemicals on your hands throughout the day. So there's no perfect answer, but what I try to tell my children is that, you know, you have this opportunity to learn and explore your world, and don't let people hold you back from that. You know, dig in there, claw in there, and discover, you know, what I was able to discover as a child.
I have one more little note on that. When we were working in Maine, we interviewed this naturalist, and I posed the question, what do you think? We were talking about dam removal and the importance of freshwater ecosystems and rivers and the species that are being inhibited from migrating up the rivers to spawn because of dams and pollution into the rivers. And I asked her what she thought what she thought the biggest threat was to the rivers. And she answered apathy. And she said that most people, you know, like you guys have all been speaking to, they don't feel that primordial inner spiritual connection to being in nature. And whether that comes through going on a hike in your local forest, you know, if there's a park reserve, or diving in the ocean if that's in your backyard, or if you have the, you know, the drive or the spirit to fly across the country, you know, or fly across the world to discover new places, that truly whatever small experience you can instill in a child or a friend or anyone in your community, like that is what I think will ultimately keep nature preserved. Because without a human interest in protecting the beauty that we live in, you know, there really is there's no future in that. So it's difficult because, yeah, the world has become more dangerous in a lot of ways, and then at the same time, it's like if we don't break that barrier, then where will we end up?
Yeah, and the barrier is it's very much a hands-off, you know, look but don't touch, and you know, we need to change that. Have the kids, you know, put their hands on the bark of a tree. You know, don't touch poison oak. Obviously, educate, but I think that's another one of the challenges is. You know,
Can I see a show of hands? How many people got poison oak as a kid?
It's good to get poison oak. I've never had it.
Really?
I'm immune.
The experience you got to have. You got to burn your hand on the pot before you learn.
Some of us never learned. We just keep on getting it over and over.
But Andrew, you got a really good point. The dynamic of change is that we need to physically experiment things. We're a species of flesh and blood, and you know, even if our mom told us not to touch the oven, we did, because that's how we learn. But nowadays the problem is that we're removed from the consequences of our actions. So it's hard for people to understand the consequences. We can talk about plastic pollution in the ocean as much as we want to. Our relationship with garbage is that at the end of the day, we all take our bag and we take it to the street. That's my physical connection to garbage. And that's, if we want people to change, we're going to need to find ways for them to physically experiment nature and the consequence of their, get them connected physically to something. Otherwise, it's just, you know, they're words.
Yeah. This conversation reminds me of a really great book called the Nature Principle, and it's by Richard Louv, and he talks about nature deficit disorder, and he also wrote Last Child in the Woods, and he talks about, you know, the growing distance between people and nature and the problems that that's causing individually and, you know, as a culture. And we had just previewed a documentary that is in post-production right now that our friend is working on, and he, the whole film is about that. It's about the human connection to nature, and after he was giving his talk on his documentary and how it's really important to reconnect with nature, he had a question and answer session afterwards, and one question that was pretty persistent was, well, what do I do? How do I help my kid get connected with nature? What can you give me something to do, a list of things I can do, or a website to go to find out activities or something that I can do? And, you know, I think that can be really challenging too. What do I do? And there's an easy answer. You can start by going for a walk, you know, but there's also, at that point, there's also what else can I do to get the children involved that are so connected to cell phones and the internet and things like that that are becoming more and more a part of our world.
So to kind of steer the conversation a little bit back towards the original topic, I love where this has gone, and also to agree with the point that I disagreed with earlier with Ben and Teresa. You can find some amazing stuff in your own backyard. I mean, a while ago there was this image that came across on the internet, and it was basically sand, just microscope with its imagery multiplied by 250 times, so you can see all what sand is made up of. And this is mind-blowing. You know, when you see the grains of sand just as it is, it just seems like little particles. But close up, you can see shells, you can see glass, you can see all of this amazing stuff that, again, as you mentioned, is in our backyard. And these images can pull in the curiosity of everybody from adults to kids to try and learn more about what is around us. And while we do have this physical connection with, you know, again, our waste stream, the nature around us, and while there is this kind of culture of, you know, stay safe, you know, I think the majority of us in this conversation were lucky enough to have parents who pushed us out there and said, go for a walk, go for a hike in the woods, go down to the stream and pick up that banana slug. You don't know where it's been, but you'll be fine. So where do, I guess trying to bring this back into the original conversation, where do images and what we save of nature for our kids, where does that influence, how can we utilize that influence in the best way for the biggest push to return to exploring nature and being a part of the world around us in a more positive way?
You have to absolutely inspire people, and children are hard to reach right now because of, you know, competition from video games, and I'm fighting this with my own children every day. But I can tell you that if you can grab them and inspire them by hands-on activities, bringing them out in the field, then you can reach them. I'm not sure that, and I hate to say this as a photographer, but I'm not sure if photos are always going to do it. I'm not sure video is always going to do it. You have to take a child by the hand and bring them into nature and let them experience it. And as a parent and as someone who's working a lot out in the oceans right now, I feel a great urgency to get my kids to some places on this earth, because I am almost positive they're going to disappear. And it might be areas that I dove as a teenager, coral reefs. It might be an area that I could go to see sharks or whales that unfortunately are changing rapidly. So, you know, not only do you take kids out there, I think you need to do it in a timely fashion before these places are gone.
Andrew, I have something to add to answer your question in a different direction. I think that I'm reminded of something that our director, Derek, told me about. And he had said that he learned from another director that now documentary filmmaking is basically the news, and that the news our major news outlets are so influenced by propaganda and corporations and things like that, that to really get to the nitty-gritty of things, you have to watch documentaries. Well, I think that goes for all independent storytellers, photographers, writers, documentarians, anything like that. And so I think that, especially with social media now and the way that we can get our news out there, I think that we need to, I guess I would hope to see more independent storytellers to continue to tell their stories, like 70 Degrees are doing it in their way, on their own terms, and likewise with us.
Most definitely. Since we are at the 52-minute mark, I think this is a good chance for everybody to wrap up the conversation in their own terms. I know that this is kind of a big conversation, and we're not going to be able to get it resolved in 1 hour, but hopefully this is a starting point for people to continue all of this amazing, vigorous conversation and discussion that is surrounding how do we solve the problem of bringing attention to the ocean, how do we solve the problem of readdressing our relationship with our Earth, and how do we get the passion back up. So I'm going to throw it to 70 Degrees West for their final comments on this conversation, and we'll just kind of go down the line.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to say I really agree with, unfortunately, as a photographer, I really agree with what Kip was saying as far as, you know, photos by themselves might not be enough right now to get people out and experiencing nature, you know, especially kids, and we might have to take people out there, get them involved in nature, get their hands in it, and get them diving. And then once they've had that exposure, I think that people are more open, more susceptible to the images that we're creating. You know, once they have a little bit of a taste of what the natural world has to offer, then we can keep them hooked with our images, and you know, we'll just keep creating powerful photography and hope that we make a change.
And lastly, I think the best thing that we can all do personally and help others that we love is just to find whatever your passion is and to pursue that, and to always, I don't know, I guess at the end of the day, kind of reassess yourself, and your part, even though it's a small part, is really important for the greater whole. You know, whether you're a human or another sort of animal species that doesn't realize that every single player is so key and essential to life on Earth. And so it's just whatever we can do to keep up our passion and continue our storytelling, whatever manner that may be, because without that, then we'd be lonely.
How about you guys, Ben and Teresa?
Well, I just want to say one thing that has come to my mind from this discussion is something that Daniel Fox was saying earlier about telling the story behind the image. And one thing I'm thinking about right now is how those images with inspirational quotes on them fly around the internet these days. What about just giving a little short synopsis of the story with some of those photos, you know, mimicking that sort of inspirational quote? That might help get that, you know, story out there.
Yeah, not a bad idea. Anything else in the final talk for this, final words for this talk?
Just get out. Just get away from the screen and just get out.
Yeah.
And just go out without any agenda. Just and you know, that's one of the things today. There's a lot of expectations with how you need to experience nature. And I think in some ways some people are intimidating about, well, I need, you know, I have to go out there and I need to save the world. Just go out. With that, like, go and have fun. And then that experience will be whatever it's supposed to be. But just go with it with an open mind, and just, even if it's just a walk and little things at the same time. You don't need to change your lifestyle to become nature friendly. It can just be little things, slowly but gradually. It will make you change inside of you. So just get out.
I have a ton of stuff that I agree with on that conversation, especially, you know, being able to just go out into the nature and allow yourself to be in awe of what you are part of. But I'm taking away from Kip. Kip, please wrap up the conversation.
Well, I just want to say what an amazing panel this has been, and such a great group of people. And I think when you have individuals like this, we all should look at the oceans and what we have in store for us with great hope, because these are the types of people that are going to push the important agendas forward. And I can tell you as a parent, I'm both concerned and excited about getting my kids out into the world. I'm really excited about what I do for a living and educating people about the important issues out there. And I think what Daniel said, just take that opportunity to take baby steps and share those experiences, and great things will happen. So that's kind of my takeaway from today.
I'd have to totally agree with you on that. This has been an amazing panel discussion. I want to thank all of our guests, Teresa and Ben from One Simple Question, Dan Fox. I want to make sure that I give a big shout out to Michelle and Justin, who it's been a pleasure to have on this and check out their stories more in depth. And Kip, of course, your photography and your work is just phenomenal, and I thank you guys so much for coming on our panel discussion, and hope that we can have you on for more. For all of our viewers at home, I want to make sure that I thank you as well for taking the time out of your busy days. Now let's all listen to what Dan Fox and everybody else has to say, and take time from these screens and go out and experience nature. Keep watch on all of our panel participants' social medias and our social media on One World Ocean. Not One World, One Ocean. That's a different group altogether, but a very useful group as well. But the Online Ocean Symposium, we are going to be having more and more discussions, and if you want to participate, look on our website for ways to do so. Once again, my name is Andrew. Thank you very much to everybody participating, everybody viewing at home, and let's go out and save our world.
Ciao, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye,
Andrew.
thank you.
Thanks, Andrew.